Okay, so we're going to begin with looking at the literature work for this year, which is finishing this year for grade 12's IEB in South Africa for Afrikaans, first additional language. And we are looking at a book called ASEM, which was written by a guy called Jan Vermeulen. And this is just a general kind of overview of everything. And then after this, we'll dissect it a little bit more. But I would still suggest that you you read through the book and you read through your summary material that you received from school in order to make sure you've kind of covered everything. So we start off with the individual, which in this case, the main character is a young boy, and he obviously, the book is called ASEM, which means breath or breathing. Asemhaal, asem is breath, and I'm going to illustrate it in a circular movement in the beginning to show you how the whole story comes back to the beginning. So ons gaan kyk na die boek ASEM en hier het ons 'n tipe van 'n visuele idee van hoe hierdie boek saamgestel is. So die metafoor in die boek wat voorkom in die boek is om te kan lewe of 'n reis na genesing. Breath in itself means air, life air. Without breath we cannot live without oxygen. So ASEM you can also look at it from a point of view in meditation or prayer, kind of from a perspective of that, where if you focus on breathing in and if you focus on breathing out, it kind of calms you down. Many meditation practices, many religious practices speaks a lot about the breath. Breathing in and out, it's something that happens naturally. Something, if you want to stop it, your natural body will force you to breathe. So it's not something you can sommer stop doing unless you underwater or somewhere where you are suffocating. It is a journey. So as you breathe in and breathe out, it is a journey that kind of brings in everything. Dit is die begin en die einde. It's the beginning and the end of life when you breathe in and you breathe out. Okay. Lewenslig, nice word there in Afrikaans, en die metafoor in die boek is om te kan lewe en 'n reis na genesing. In die verhaal het ons die ma en die pa en die kind figuurtjie. And the story starts, there's our circular movement again. The story starts met Barry's Barnard wat verjaar. It is his birthday. It starts there, and it starts where he goes out with his friends at night. But before we can go on, we need to kind of look at the historical events first. So prior to this 17th birthday of his, we learn that throughout the story, we learn that his father was quite abusive, and that's what that little face there kind of represents. And I think the important part there is to remember that whatever parents do to you as a child kind of stays for very long in your reality until you decide to make a change. His father was quite abusive towards him, and this obviously made him become angry. Not at first as a young 5-year-old, but later on in his teenage life, we start realizing that there's a little bit of anger going on, or a lot of anger, due to the fact that his father was abusive. He was quite sporty, but no matter what he did, whether he was a star at school, sporty, well-known, quite popular, he always carried this anger in his heart with him. And this is what brings us to the beginning where the story starts, where him and his friends go out to party. He buys drugs for them. They go and they drive in a car to the club, and they abuse the drugs and use the drugs on his command and his, kind of support in it. And as we go along through the story, you can keep in mind the fact that he's been very kwaad. Hy was baie kwaad, hy's baie angry, he's got a hole to fill in his heart, something feels missing. And throughout using the drugs and the rebellious phase, they that night then drive into a police officer. And this was kind of a turning point, and this is where everything ends. It's the beginning of the end and the beginning of the new beginning, or so kind of thing. So this very hectic situation that took place was a wake-up call, and a time to take a serious look into Barry's Barnard's life. He ends up in hospital, his mom not knowing what to do anymore. She's raad op. Sy weet nie meer wat om te doen nie. Sy gee moed op met hom. Sy is ook nou kwaad, and he still has that anger in him as well. So this anger, that the consequences from the dad's anger is so continuous throughout his journey, even now with the mess up with this accident. The police officers, after speaking to him, demands that he must go visit his dad, who was the abuser. Now, one will ask, why would a police officer send the child back to the father if the father was the cause of many of the issues? So, and this is part of the journey that is, and the theme of the story as well. So, which we'll talk about shortly. So, this young man, Barry's Barnard, gets put on a bus, accompanied by another police officer towards Himansdorp. He gets off at Himansdorp at a bus station, and he climbs into a car with another angry man called Stef, a friend of his dad, who he thought first was his dad, and they drive then to Seeplaas, where his father lives. His father's name is Powell, remember? So, Barry's had been an accident. He was the cause of the accident due to the drugs that he was forcing his friends to take as well, or not forcing his friends, but making his friends part of it. He's ended up in hospital. His mom said she doesn't know what to do. The police officer says, Constable Mfeka says that he must go to his father. He obviously refuses to. They force him. It's either that or jail time. Gets on the bus, goes to Himansdorp. Sergeant Struder obviously goes with him. Gets off at Himansdorp. Stef, who we thought was his dad, which is not his dad, takes him further in a beach buggy to Seeplaas. On the way, they've got some adversities happening, not getting along at all. He warns buddies not to interfere in their lives, etc. We'll get to the nitty-gritties now. He then gets to meet his dad, who he kind of realizes is still the same. He finds alcohol in the house. He starts fighting and rebelling against his father as well. He doesn't like Seeplaas because it's very primitive. They have to use a generator for power, etc. He meets Olga, a girl that is dating Stef, the guy that came with him, or that brought him with in the beach buggy. Even though Stef warned him not to mess with her, she is smoking with his head as well. But he's starting to form a relationship with her. He also meets a guy called Phyllis, which is a local young man on the farm, which he then at first thinks stole his clothes. And then he saves a dog's life that he heard that fell into the ocean. And he starts experiencing certain aspects of growth and things changing in his life. But at the same time, it's for him, it feels like it's going worse before it's going to get better. He doesn't even know that it's going to get better. He feels alienated from his family, his mother, his friends that doesn't really answer his calls anymore. He feels heartbroken about his girlfriend Lizette that was in the car with him that night in the accident. And then he also finds out that the cop that they drove over in the car, his wife is pregnant, and he hears that the cop has passed away. So a lot of things comes down, bad things coming down. It's continuous. Stef is giving him issues. His father is trying to make amends, but he doesn't trust him. And this whole time, remember the reason why he wanted to go, well, he was happy to, eventually going to see a place to see his dad is to put poison in his alcohol to kill him, to punish him for all that he's did wrong. Eventually, he finds out that his mom has been stabbed back at home in Joburg. He goes back to the city and he gets a wake-up call in the process while he's visiting his mom in hospital, speaking to the pregnant wife of the passed away cop, having Olga arrive there, drugged out of her mind. He visits his mom in hospital, and he comes to the realization that this was his mistake. This was his to do. And eventually, with the help of people, good people, amongst them, Eunice's father, who's a doctor, and the pregnant wife of the passed away cop, speaks sense to him and says, go back to Seeplaas. And even Powell arrives and he says, come back to Seeplaas, bring your mom with, so that we can look after her. So there's a full circle, again, breath, awesome. And things happen, there's a turning point, you breathe out, and we come back to the beginning where we have to breathe in again. And that's kind of the theme of the story, the giving, the taking, the growing up, the making of decisions, the facing of yourself, the facing of the dark side, the realization of consequences of decisions and mistakes we make, etc. There's a full circle that the story symbolically has followed. If you want to find out more, please go and watch part 2, where I will continue delving into a little bit more intense and more detailed parts of the story.